This video will contain minor spoilers for The Mandalorian and Grogu, derived from its marketing materials. It will also contain major spoilers for the Mandalorian series, in case anyone watching this hasn't seen that yet. The Razor Crest is one of the most beloved hero ships in all of Star Wars, ranking right up there with the likes of the Ghost and the Millennium Falcon for many fans. I've covered this vessel once before, but with it making its triumphant return in The Mandalorian and Grogu, it seemed like time to give it another look. I'm Joey from Radio Free Coruscant, and this is everything there is to know about the Razor Crest. Design. The Razor Crest was a Corellian Engineering Corporation Bell-Smith Consolidations ST-70 assault ship. It had a long, narrow hull with two short wings at the top, a round cockpit at the front, and two large cylindrical engines at the tips of its wings. I have always thought that this design was originally meant to be a Bodajef Shipyards product based on its appearance and name, but when it came time to write its lore for the 2024 Star Wars Encyclopedia, they seemingly forgot that Star Wars has other ship manufacturers besides CEC. Fortunately, the 2026 Mandalorian visual guide at least made it a little more interesting by changing it to Bell-Smith instead. That book also mentions that its engines are a hallmark of Bodajef Shipyards and that they were involved in the ship's design as well, so it seems I was correct. The ship's weapons were attached to either side of the cockpit, and its main boarding ramps were located just behind them. There was also a third boarding ramp at the rear. Its engines were fairly complex, with 4 thrust reverser flaps around the middle of each of them to improve the ship's maneuverability and braking power. There was also a landing thruster on the bottom of each engine, concealed behind a protective armor plate in flight. Each engine had several concentric rings of thrusters at the rear, as well as an adjustable thrust nozzle. Between the wings, along its spine, the ship had a variety of equipment, including its escape pod in the center and shield projectors just behind that. Its wings were mostly structural to hold its enormous engines, but did contain the ship's repulsor lifts and fuel tanks. The interior of the ST-70 was just as Spartan as its exterior, with very little in the way of creature comforts. It technically had 2 decks, though it was really more like 1.5. The upper deck only had the cockpit, a small vestibule with a ladder to move between the 2 decks, and access to the escape pod. The rest of the ship's rooms were on the lower deck. It had small sleeping quarters in the nose below the cockpit, a refresher and storage locker behind that, and the remainder of the interior was taken up by its cargo bay. The cargo bay had port, starboard, and rear boarding ramps, as well as a floor hatch for docking. Din Djarin's Razor Crest was modified to include a small carbon freezing chamber in the cargo bay as well. In-universe, the Razor Crest was designed by Bell-Smith engineers, with some components contributed by other companies. In real life, the ship was designed by Ryan Church, Doug Chiang, Rene Garcia, and Jay Mikado based on a design brief conceived by Jon Favreau. Favreau's prompt was to create something like the A-10 Thunderbolt II Warthog attack craft, and the team also drew inspiration from various World War II planes, derelict aircraft at airport graveyards, and things like that. I've always thought it looked like the B-25 Mitchell bomber, so perhaps that was one of the planes they looked at. Additionally, a couple pieces of concept art for the Razor Crest were combined together and used as a background ship in many episodes of The Mandalorian, known as the AAC-39 freighter. A physical shooting miniature for the Razor Crest was built by ILM model maker John Goodson, and a motion control rig for filming it was created by John Knoll. Both CGI and practical shots of the Razor Crest were used throughout the first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian. Specifications. The ST-70 assault ship measured 24.27 meters long by 16.3 meters wide and 7.4 meters tall. It likely had a top speed of around 950 kilometers per hour and a Class II hyperdrive. It was armed with 2 Mark III EW heavy laser cannons and 2 concussion missile launchers. The ship required only one crew, and could carry roughly 4 to 10 passengers, and likely 5 to 10 tons of cargo. Its price is unknown, but I would guess it to be around 120,000 credits new, and probably 90 to 100,000 used, due to its apparent status as a collector's item. History. Very little is known of the history of the ST-70 assault ship. It was created sometime prior to the dawn of the Empire and the additional ship registration requirements that the Empire introduced, probably even before the Clone Wars. It was built by Bellsmith Consolidations, a little-known subsidiary of the Corellian Engineering Corporation, in collaboration with Bottijeff Shipyards and several other manufacturers. One of these was likely Dymec, a starship weapons manufacturer with similar product naming conventions to the Mark III EW cannons on the ST-70. The most famous ST-70 was by far the Razor Crest, owned by bounty hunter Din Djarin. He purchased the ship sometime during the reign of the Empire and used it for many years. In 9 ABY, he took it on a fateful mission to capture a bounty for an anonymous client. The bounty turned out to be Grogu, a mysterious Jedi child, and the client turned out to be working for Moff Gideon, an Imperial warlord. After delivering the child to the client, Din changed his mind and rescued him, fleeing in the Razor Crest and outrunning or outgunning the other bounty hunters sent after him for several months. Unfortunately, though, Moff Gideon would eventually catch up with him when he took Grogu to an ancient Jedi site on Tython and destroyed the Razor Crest with a turbolaser shot from his Arquitens cruiser. An unknown amount of time later, Din Djarin would manage to get his hands on a new ST-70 assault ship. After taking some time off from bounty hunting to help retake Mandalore from Moff Gideon's control, he started working with the New Republic to capture other warlords like Gideon. The New Republic captured a warlord who happened to be a classic starship collector, and among the ships in his collection was a newly restored ST-70 assault ship in pristine condition, complete with a shiny yellow paint job. They awarded this ship to the Mandalorian as payment for a job, and as incentive to take on a particularly dangerous mission they needed his help with next. Naturally, he accepted this deal, and the Razor Crest II became his new bounty hunting vehicle. That is all we know of the history of either Razor Crest at this time, and of the ST-70 class as a whole, but I'm sure we will see plenty more of them in the years to come. And that's everything there is to know about the Razor Crest. As usual, let me know what you think of this ship, and what other ships you'd like to see covered next, especially ships from the Mandalorian series or movie. It looks like there will be some interesting ones featured in The Mandalorian and Grogu, so keep an eye out for some videos related to them soon. Also, let me know what you think of the Razor Crest returning for the movie. I'm not really sure what to think of it. On one hand, basically everything of consequence that happened in the Season 2 finale has been undone at this point, and Mando getting a new Razor Crest is kind of the last nail in the coffin. Moff Gideon was captured by the New Republic, but then escaped custody off-screen so he could stick around for one more season. Din claimed the Darksaber and became the new leader of Mandalore, but he didn't really want to be, so he found an excuse to pawn it off on Bo-Katan, and then it was destroyed. He found the Jedi he had been searching for to take care of Grogu, but then Grogu didn't really want to be a Jedi anymore, so he came back to Din after like a month. The new Razor Crest and Din's Amban pulse rifle were both destroyed, but then he just gets a new one of each as payment for a job. I don't have a problem with any of those plot points individually, but when you put them all together, it kind of seems like we've spent the last several years trying to walk back everything important that happened in one of the most popular season finales in Star Wars for some reason. But, on the other hand, the Razor Crest is one of the most iconic Star Wars ships of the last 20 years, if not the most, so it would be crazy not to include it in the Mandalorian movie. The description Jon Favreau has given of where the new one came from is certainly more interesting than if Mando had just bought a new one of his own volition, though we'll have to see how the interaction actually plays out in the film to know for sure. And the VFX team did a good job of freshening it up with cleaner metal and a nice sharp paint job, so it will at least not feel like they just somehow magically put the old one back together again. I don't know, I'm excited to see the ship on the big screen, even if it further cheapens the events of Season 2. It just wouldn't be the same with the N1. But like I said, let me know what you think. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next week. RFC, out.